Good evening from the Diamond Resort and Casino in Mere Park. My name is Nigel Worcestershire, and I welcome you all to the CNT gubernatorial debates between the remaining three candidates and their running mates. For this event, all three candidates are in attendance. On the left-hand side, Cole Gordon and Oliver Hall. Excuse me, the right-hand side for those in the crowd. Cole Gordon and Oliver Hall. In the middle, Vlad Todd and Carmen McKenzie, not in attendance due to a personal matter. And on the left, Andre Johnson and Jennifer Salison. We want to also take the time to thank the Little Teapot and Merryweather Security for their services rendered this evening. The Little Teapot has a booth set up on the upper deck of the resort and will be floating around with refreshments as you see fit. CNT has created the format for this debate, which all of the candidates have received and have agreed to follow. For those in our live audience, here are the debate rules. There will be one question directed at each candidate. Each candidate will have roughly 90 seconds to respond to the question. Following the question, there will be 3 minutes of debate among the candidates with 2 minutes of extra leeway for direct questions. The moderator, myself, Nigel Worcestershire, may interrupt any candidate if I believe the candidate is straying away from the current subject matter. The candidates are also not to interrupt one another. It is at my responsibility and discretion, not the candidates, to enforce this rule. A full list of rules for this debate are currently available for all our guests to review online at www.cnt-sa.com/winter-election. The guests for tonight's debate have agreed to remain quiet and not to clap or boo for any candidate, so everyone can understand what the candidates are saying. Disruptive candidates and guests will be removed from the event as we see fit. The order for the responses in tonight's debate have been determined by the CNT Paleto poll from January 1st to the 3rd. The questions from this debate have not been shared with any candidate and have been made up by the CNT political team, in addition to various questions fielded from the public. And with the rules and the formats out of the way, let's get right into the debate, ladies and gentlemen. In the CNT Paleto poll from January 1st to the 3rd, Cole Gordon led the poll by 1 point. Since then, Cole Gordon has hosted a town hall event. Vlad Todd and Carmen McKenzie have not hosted any events. However, they have received their endorsement by several representative candidates and the current governor, James Paxton. Andre Johnson and Jennifer Salison have also hosted an event at the start of the campaign period. We have allotted 3 rounds for this debate, with the first question being directed at the Gordon Hall campaign for Mr. Gordon. Gubernatorial candidate Gordon, with the ongoing open conflict happening between different elements inside the state, how would your administration balance safety and ensuring peace on our streets?
Mr. Worcestershire, I thank you for inviting us here today, and I thank everyone in attendance here today for coming out. Under a Gordon administration, we would work in coordination with law enforcement to ensure that the law is currently upheld and fairly applied to all citizens of the state. We would attempt to establish the conditions and the reasons, along with the assistance from MCD, to find out what is causing the crime, why it is happening, where it is happening, and how we can fix it. It'd be a joint effort amongst my administration, as well as the law enforcement agencies in the state, to ensure that all citizens are protected and remain safe. Oliver is also going to touch on this one as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Nigel, overall, we are facing an unprecedented amount of violence on our streets, facing a lot of issues. And our main objective, should we be elected, is to make sure that law enforcement have the resources that they need in order to combat all the violence that is occurring, and ensure that individuals that have been found to partake in these acts of violence are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Absolutely fantastic. Would you like to weigh back in, Mr. Gordon?
No, I think I couldn't have said it better myself.
Absolutely. Perfect. We will now take the allotted time of group discussion if any of the other gubernatorial candidates would like to weigh in on this topic.
I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Right, we can move into the 2-minute time period for direct questions.
Lovely. Mr. Gordon, first of all, I commend you for working diligently with law enforcement in regards to making sure that the streets are clean. However, you can only do so much. Frankly, with what you've just stated, that's pretty much what anyone can do. What makes what you just said any different from what myself or the two candidates beside me would do?
Sure, I appreciate it. And I just want to clarify, you're not stating that you don't have faith in the current law enforcement at all?
Oh, I definitely do.
Okay, perfect. So we agree as well that we have faith in the current law enforcement. However, we understand that they need adequate funding and resources to be able to identify areas of crime and identify the causes of crime, as well as investigate and prosecute those people fairly and equally within the law. One of the things that we do, and one of the things that we've said, is we have a plan, not just an idea, but a plan to ensure that law enforcement have the adequate resources necessary at their disposal to be able to create a safe environment for every citizen of the state. Overall, I agree that every candidate up here today has the same idea, but the Gordon administration has a plan that we plan on putting into action. Oliver personally worked on this with me, and I will let him continue on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main differences between us and the other candidates is, I think we can all agree again that we all want to support our law enforcement. But one of the major policies that we, of course, want to bring, should we be elected, is ensure that a budget resolution is passed by the legislature to fund all of the different departments. And that absolutely includes law enforcement. No other candidate on this stage is prepared to work with law enforcement to actually form a budget to make sure that they do have the resources to combat this rise in violence and crime.
That statement wasn't factual, actually. I myself has actually been working with law enforcement to make sure that my so-called idea gets put into action. Go on.
As well, both of us standing over here in law enforcement. So I'm curious, Mr. Gordon, as well. You said you have a plan in place to combat what's going on, but the current issue is that it's going on now. So you're withholding your plan until you're elected? Because currently everything that you stated is what's going on, as well as they're working with MCD. So how is what you just stated any different than what the current administration and the current law enforcement are doing?
I just want to inform you we are over time, but I will allow a last word response from the Gordon campaign.
Sure. So I'll touch on this briefly for about 30 seconds, and I'll let Oliver also touch on it. Overall, my office within the DOJ that I currently hold has diligently worked with law enforcement to ensure that people who commit violent crimes against other citizens of the state are brought to justice, and that the victims' rights and the victims' needs are upheld. My office was the first office to introduce a victims' rights bill into our SOPs to ensure that the victims are receiving due justice and are involved in any criminal prosecution, and not limited to, but including stuff like informing them when a person is placed on bail, making sure that they are taking part in the court proceedings and informed as necessary how they're going, making sure that they have the ability to write a victim impact statement, and making sure that if we do decide to reach a plea deal, that they are informed and that they give the final approval of that. And that is something that I want to see overall done more. I believe that the victims should be better represented within the state, and overall just working with law enforcement to ensure that they have everything that they need is something that we are currently doing to this day, and I plan on doing with a higher position within government as well. And Oliver, if you want to touch on it too.
You said perfectly.
Right, I'm going to be calling time on that, mate, and we're going to be moving on to the next question for the next candidate. All right. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. The next question is going to be directed at the Todd McKenzie campaign. Gubernatorial candidate Vlad Todd, as governor, how would you attempt to promote government and business partnerships without creating sponsorship deals like Public Works and Sprunk?
Well, first and foremost, from my understanding, Public Works is a government entity. So the fact that they sought sponsorships from a third party was appalling to me. With how difficult You know what? I'm not going to say difficult because they have a lot on their plate, and I was recently explained how much they go through on a day-to-day basis. With how stretched thin they are, a lot of businesses have a lot of different ideas and a lot of great plans that they want to roll out. But unfortunately, there are very few people within Public Works that can actually assist them with this. What my administration intends to do is to, one, not only establish a sort of, not a divide, but more so a branch within Public Works that focuses on working with businesses diligently, something that's a lot more efficient and just more proactive within our community, that allows businesses to, one, not only get up on their feet faster, but to make sure that we are interacting with these businesses and making sure they have what they need at a much more faster and efficient pace.
Absolutely, Mr. Todd. We're now going to take 2 minutes if anybody would like to respond to the topic. I apologize, 3 minutes. If anybody would like to weigh into the government sponsorship topic.
Sure. So from the Gordon Hall administration, one of the things that we want to do to ensure things like that don't happen again, unfortunately, under the current administration, Public Works was allowed to take a private sponsorship. One of the things that we plan on establishing is a government oversight committee, as well as we wouldn't allow that to happen anyways, but with the government oversight committee, we would ensure with that plan, with that action, that something like that wouldn't happen again. I believe it's a failure of our current administration that was ever allowed to happen, and it affected so many citizens as it did. When it comes to the business deals and how to better work with businesses, we've said that already, that we have a plan and we plan on taking action to conduct complete performance reviews on each department. One of the things that we've already identified, even without taking office yet, has been the fact that communication with DOCL, as well as Public Works, seems to be lacking, and it's lacking on both ends. It's lacking because there is no transparency as to what services are fully available to the citizens of the state and what Public Works can truly offer and who to contact. We plan on increasing that transparency and increasing the communication between Public Works and DOCL and the business owners to ensure that business owners and small businesses have the resources necessary to them to get what they need to have their business be successful.
I do have a question, Mr. Todd, for you, actually.
Absolutely.
Now,
Well, if we could take the opportunity to have the Salison campaign, or sorry, the Johnson campaign weigh in if they would like to,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
and then we could move to the direct questions. All right, Mr. Hall.
Absolutely.
Would you guys like to weigh in on the topic?
We would, and I appreciate that.
Sure thing.
So, under our administration, if we are elected, we do want to see more from the small business side of things, working with DOCL. We've talked to quite a few businesses, and they've all stated the same generalized answers, that DOCL is not very available for them. And there's no resources available to the individuals once they've paid their taxes, and they're waiting on current buildings and business plans to go in. We have spoken to a number of businesses that have worked together actually, and have created a document that is available for all small businesses. And we've actually been pushing that to other businesses so that they have a right of way and they know exactly which direction to go with. That comes down to attorneys, as well as, excuse me, 1 second. You want to take over for a second? Something's in my throat. Sorry about that.
Which is fine.
We've spoken with them, as well as them getting financial support, not in terms of money, but just ways ahead that they can better their books and actually have an idea of who to contact, who's available to them, who in Public Works can help them as well. So that's something that we've already implemented and tried to push out to other businesses so that they can actually have a way ahead instead of waiting until if we're elected.
Absolutely. I appreciate the response, gubernatorial candidate Johnson. All right, and we're going to be time on the group topic. We'll now move in to the direct questions if you would like to take the floor first, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Mr. Todd, I had a question for you. You stated that you did not support the partnership between Sprunk and Public Works. And I'm curious how that can be true when your current running mate is a part of the administration that allowed the sponsorship to take place in the first place.
For starters, I cannot speak for Ms. McKenzie. So if you'd like to ask her that yourself at a later date, you can more than happily do so. With me personally, From what I understand, and as a business owner myself, no, I personally do not support the sponsorship that Sprunk had given Public Works. From my understanding, Public Works has gone to multiple different businesses doing health inspections and forcing select businesses to sell Sprunk, which I 110 again do not support. Businesses should be able to sell whatever it is that they choose and please at their own discretion.
I fully agree, and I think it's unfortunate that the running mate allowed that sort of conduct to happen.
Well, like I said, unfortunately, I cannot speak for Miss McKenzie, but I'm pretty sure that if she were here, she'd have a fairly decent explanation. But unfortunately, what happened. And I'm pretty sure the current legislation and Public Works have saw that that sponsorship was a grave mistake on their part, and will do better in the future, especially once myself or either one of you guys are elected. We are definitely in agreement that any third-party sponsorships with a government entity should be prohibited.
Are there any other direct questions for the Todd campaign? Sure thing. Moving along here. The next round of questioning is going to be directed at the Johnson-Salison campaign. Gubernatorial candidate Johnson, as the underdog, according to CNT polls, why should someone vote for you over Mr. Todd or Mr. Gordon?
Thank you, Nigel. That's a fantastic question, and I've actually been asked that quite a few times. While we all stand for more or less the same thing, we're all talking about reform, rehabilitation, and some sort of reintegration into the system. I feel that myself and Ms. Salison have seen more in the terms of actual streets, individuals who, yes, Mr. Gordon, I understand you work with the DOJ as well as Mr. Hall, agreed, understood. You guys have seen them actually, down the cells or at the court, understood. But the initial front and being able to interact with someone on their first day of their worst case is something that we have more ability and more process through. With that stated, we understand that everybody wants to see everybody, profit and do better than what they have before. But the statement is that why should you vote for us? Is that we've actually seen the individuals and the struggles that everybody is going through. We're both working diligently to make sure that we understand that we have got a better opinion and view of how things work in the state. Sorry for that. As well, one of the biggest things that we want to see is rehabilitation for individuals. We've both worked with multiple groups that have stated that they're running their own private or their own private rehabilitation. There's an individual that works out of their home, and working with him to help DHS is going to benefit the entire state. To my knowledge, neither Cole nor Vlad at the time, again, that's at the time, not to my knowledge now, had spoken with the individual. And with that, we feel that we've got a better handle on the rehabilitation side for the state.
Sure thing, and that is going to be time as well, Mr. Johnson. All right, we appreciate your response. We'll now move into the group discussion. If any of the other campaigns would like to weigh in on the Johnson campaign's topic.
Sure. So from the Gordon campaign, Mr. Johnson referred to the individual. I'd like to make it publicly known that individual that he's speaking about is Oliver Langmore. Oliver Langmore does great work for the citizens of the state, helping them rehabilitate through the grips of addiction. This is something that we have personally spoken with him on, and how we could better that if we do take office. I'd also like to remind the public and Mr. Johnson as well that both Oliver Hall and myself are experienced trial attorneys and both have previous criminal defense experience within our own private firms. We've personally been at the forefront of helping people rehabilitate from the start of our careers here in the state as lawyers and as attorneys. We personally help citizens make sure that there's a fair application of the law, whether it be on the side of criminal defense or the DOJ. And we've personally been involved in multiple rehabilitation efforts, helping people that have been convicted of a crime reintegrate into society after the fact.
Absolutely, Mr. Gordon. Gubernatorial candidate, Mr. Todd, would you like to weigh in?
Absolutely.
Sure thing.
So when it comes down to Mr. Langmore and everything that he does, one, for starters, I think he does absolutely amazing work. I have had personal close friends of mine attend his sessions, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to personally attend to see the work that he does. One, out of respect for him and the people that attend for their own privacy and security. But I just admire his work overall. I think that his initiative to offer some sort of rehabilitation on a societal and community level is inspiring. In regards to what the Todd and McKenzie campaign would like to offer is we want to work with, excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that.
Just fine.
We want to work directly with Mr. Langmore to offer him more resources to further expand his reach in regards to those who suffer from any sort of addiction. We also want to offer more services to those who have been tried and charged with any criminal offenses. Rehabilitation when it comes to an addiction or criminal level is something that we are heavily geared towards. It's something that we will really, really like to see implemented in the city, whether it be on a government or societal level.
Sure thing. Would the Johnson campaign like to weigh back in? We're coming up on time here, but I'll allow a final word on the topic.
Yes. Do I have time to see something?
Sure thing.
Okay. I would just like to let it publicly known that I am also bar certified, and that I have some experience being prosecutor and also defense attorney. So I do understand what it's like dealing and helping with people, as for what Gordon was stating earlier.
Absolutely. Thank you for that response, Ms. Salison. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be concluding the first round of questioning and going in a round robin. We're going to come right back to the start and move into the second round. This question is also dedicated to gubernatorial candidate Cole Gordon. Mr. Gordon, only a couple hours before this debate took place, in your official capacity, you released a memo and a court docket announcing that a candidate running in the current legislative election had been arrested and that charges were being announced. Do you believe that as a candidate yourself, announcing the arrest of another candidate would be a conflict of interest?
No, I do not, and I fully disagree with the claim that Mr. Ozias had made publicly. Mr. Ozias said that I'm running against him, and that is categorically false. Obviously, I'm running for governor, and he is running for state rep. My campaign has not opposed a single state representative candidate, and we've actually worked with even the state representative candidates that have supported the Johnson campaigns as well as the Vlad Todd campaign. I've spoken with Hudson Welsh. I've spoken with Josh Zimmerman. I've spoken with the other state reps who, Endeavor Jackson, for example, who have supported the Todd campaign and plan on working with them in the future as well. So my office and myself and our campaign holds no ill will towards any of the candidates whatsoever. The fact of the matter is, it is my job as a state attorney and a prosecutor for the state to ensure that the law is fairly and equally applied to all citizens of the state, and to ensure that the citizens of the state are safe and make sure that everyone is safe here. And that's really what it is at the end of the day. Mr. Ozias is innocent until proven guilty. However, we had probable cause for an arrest because it was our belief, and it is our belief, that Mr. Ozias, while acting as pilot in command of an aircraft, had that aircraft unsafely operated in this vicinity of citizens, putting multiple lives at risk. And that is something that we do not want to see. And that is my job to make sure that every citizen in this state is protected.
We appreciate your response, Gordon. In 30 seconds, would Mr. Hall like to weigh in?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, overall, I'm unsure if Mr. Ellows doesn't understand what a conflict of interest is, but the current case that is being formed against Mr. Ozias is not a conflict of interest. It is it is an unfortunate set of circumstances that he was arrested. However, simply being a candidate in a separate election does not constitute a conflict of interest.
Sure thing. Thank you for that response. And now moving into the group discussion, if the other campaigns would like to weigh in on this topic. All right, we're going to be moving right along into another round of direct questions if the other candidates have any questions directed at the Gordon campaign. All right, moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be moving into the second round of questioning for the Todd McKenzie campaign. Mr. Todd, your running mate stated in the government debates that the executive officials writing bills would be a conflict of interest. It's clear that only legislative members can introduce a bill. However, in fellow states and in the federal government, the executive is constantly involved in the process of lawmaking, including writing their own bills to fit its agenda and submitting it to a friendly member of the legislature. If you could clarify, is there a process in the state of San Andreas which prohibits the executive branch from aiding in the legislative process? Or is this a campaign decision?
Are you speaking in regards to the federal debate that was held a few days ago?
Correct.
I was speaking on the knowledge base that was given to me. In regards to governors and lieutenant governors writing legislation, I am not opposed to that. And if need be, if there is a time that laws need to be written, then so be it. I will be more than happy to make the effort and take that extra step to write the law myself. And I'm pretty sure Ms. McKenzie would do the same. However, unfortunately, with what I've been given in terms of information on how the current legislation works, it is the 5 state representatives that write the laws. The governor is the one who basically vetoes or approves the bill. And the lieutenant governor acts as a liaison between the two, basically. If the governor or the lieutenant governor, by their own word, would like to propose a bill, it is the state representative's responsibility to write said legislation and propose it to the public. And it'll be voted upon by the 5 state representatives and then signed by the governor or vetoed if the bill isn't sufficient.
So here today, are you for or against the current system of legislation in San Andreas?
Myself, I am indifferent. If need be, as I stated before, if myself or Ms. McKenzie would have to write the legislation ourselves and then propose it to the state representatives, it would be a collective vote. I would have no power if I were to write the legislation to veto a bill. The only way it would be vetoed is if all 5 representatives vote nay.
Sure thing. Thank you for that response, Mr. Todd. We'll now move into the group discussion if the other campaigns would like to weigh in on this topic.
Absolutely, Nigel. I mean, overall, I think it's quite unfortunate, the statement that Ms. McKenzie made during the debate, and I'll sort of reiterate what I said. I mean, overall, her attitude towards writing bills and trying to actually get legislation done for the benefit of San Andreas really is representative of the current administration, the administration that does not actually want to work for the citizens of San Andreas. And I mean, overall, it is unfortunate that Ms. McKenzie would not be willing to work with the legislature as hard as she can to get this beneficial legislation passed and actually completed. I mean, overall, Cole and I are in the same boat on this issue. You know, when it comes to writing bills, when it comes to getting bills signed into law, we're going to do whatever we can to ensure that that happens. And if we need to stay up all night writing a bill and having working with the legislature to make sure that it's proposed and passed, we're going to do it.
Just to touch on that, that is an assumption, not a factual statement. What Ms. McKenzie was trying to explain to you, but you so profusely refused to listen, was how the current legislation worked. As I've stated previously, myself, and I'm pretty sure Ms. McKenzie would say the same thing, would not mind writing legislation. If need be, if the action needs to be taken where myself or Ms. McKenzie needs to write the legislation, we will so happily do so. If it is needed for the current times and the current circumstances.
That's not
And
what
here
Ms.
she is
McKenzie
now.
said during the debate.
Then would you mind reiterating what she said? Because she's presently here now, and I'm pretty sure she can fact check you on that.
Absolutely. Ms. McKenzie, if you'd like to state what you said.
I said it's inappropriate for me to write a bill from start to finish, given that it would go directly to my running mate here, making it awkward to try and claim that it is above board. If we were to just pass it or veto it, it would feel as though the legislation would feel obligated to pass it. I have no problems writing bills or working as hard as I can or staying up all night either. This is assumption that you're making off of nothing. But the fact of me not pinning it myself removes an overreach. It removes the idea that just because I pinned it, it has to go through. Who is supposed to be the checks and balances to me should this be a bad bill? Who is supposed to veto it if the governor's writing it? That doesn't make sense. It's not something that I'm against doing. I feel like it has a moral conundrum attached to it.
Right. Sorry, mate. We're going to be up on
That's
time on this. All right. I would like to welcome Miss McKenzie to the debates. All right. We're glad you were able to make it. And I'm glad you was able to weigh in on that topic specifically. We do still have 2 minutes if either one of the campaigns would like to direct any questions to the Todd McKenzie campaign in debate round 2 here. Take the floor, please.
Yes, I do have a question for Mr. Todd.
Absolutely.
When it comes between you and Carmen, speaking on the question that was asked by the moderator, will you ensure that teamwork will be in place? Just speaking in general, having a team that can't come to decisions together, that would pose a concern. So will you ensure that teamwork is always in place if you are elected into office?
The fact of the matter is, and I'm really glad you asked that question, the government overall, the legislature is in itself a team. I'm not just going to call shots or make executive orders just because I feel like it. At the end of the day, it's a collaborative, it's a collective effort to make sure that this state gets ushered into the age where it needs to be. For a better tomorrow, safer streets, and just laws that are better defined so that one, everyone's rights are constitutionally and legally protected. But two, everyone gets a fair chance to essentially, give me 1 second, let me just collect my thoughts. Just to blatantly answer that question, yes. Yes, there will be 110% teamwork within the legislation should I get elected.
Okay.
Does the Gordon Hall campaign have any direct questions? All
No,
right.
I think we're good.
Moving along to the next round of questioning for the Johnson-Salison campaign. This question is going to be directed at gubernatorial candidate Andre Johnson. Mr. Johnson, in your agenda, you propose a community service program to be for incarcerated people to engage with the community. How would this program be implemented and ensure compliance with the program in what already is an operationally stretched corrections department?
Thank you for that question. I'm actually glad you asked that. That's one of our, like I said earlier, that's a big thing for us. We want to see individuals have the chance to reform themselves and become citizens of the state again. One of the biggest things that we can do is, yes, you are absolutely correct. The DOC is stretched thin, as you stated. I can tell you from working in law enforcement that stretched thin is maybe even a stretch for them right now. They do need some help. They do need some assistance, and we need to get a corrections officer team in there to actually, have individuals have parole officers, and that's going to be one of the biggest things too. Is you have the individuals that are responsible for those that are on parole. Excuse me, and going forward with that, that's going to you're going to have to expand and have a bigger DOC. With that stated, it's going to create more jobs for the economy. You're going to see more people that, while maybe they aren't sure if they want to go into law enforcement, but DOC is a thing that they've had interest and held passion for, and they want to help people, they'll go towards that. So in the long run, it's going to create jobs for them. It's going to create opportunities for the individuals that have been incarcerated and those that have spent years and months in prison. How do we go about it, day to day? It's going to create to be honest, it's going to create yes, it's going to create more work for certain individuals. However, with the expansion of DOC, you're going to see some individuals able to take less off their plate and not worry about the aspects of, when it comes to somebody that's on parole, they know who to go to. They know exactly where they can go to, and they know who they should be speaking with. As well, there has been works put in that there are recreation centers being built up around the state. There was one recently built, I believe, by Monash, and that is one thing that we would leverage as well. If we spoke about Oliver Langmore earlier, how he is running things out of his home. That's not something I have nothing against that, and I've spoken to Oliver at his house. It was fantastic to speak with him, Bexton, as well as Spencer Belmont. The conversation was enlightening and it was very, very thorough. As well, we want to see the ability
Sure
for
thing,
people
Mr. Johnson.
to
I
not
apologise. I'm
just-
going to have to call
Yeah.
time on you.
No
all right,
worries, no
mate?
worries.
Absolutely.
I
I
appreciate
gave you a
you.
little leeway there, but
Oh,
I've got
I
to rein you in
appreciate
a bit. All right, mate?
No worries.
Right. No problem. So we're going to now move into the group discussion. If anybody if they would like to weigh in on the topic that was directed at the Johnson campaign.
Sure, we'd like to touch on it just briefly here. Overall,
Take
I'm
the floor.
glad that Andre Johnson brought up the fact of DOC. We all think, I all think we know that DOC is in a current disarray and is lacking any true leadership. One of the ways, however, that the Gordon campaign plans on correcting that is by establishing means of hiring. One of the things that I'd like to see done more often, for example, is we attended a job fair in Mirror Park that was arranged by the community over there about probably a month and a half, if not 2 months ago now. When it came down to it, the only government departments that were there were myself with the DOJ, the Public Defender's Office, and EMS. Police department did show up, but that was only after shots were fired at the event. I'd like to see the government hire or have more hiring events to make the public known as to what jobs within the government are available to them. I'd like to see DOC, the police department, the park rangers, all of them attend and speak with the citizens as to what opportunities are available to them. When it comes down to it, I fully agree with Mr. Johnson about the parole officers. I think that's a huge issue. Myself personally, last night, I was speaking with and filed a court case for Jamison Thomas, who is alleged to have violated his parole. It is obviously up to the courts to determine whether he did that or not. But one of the concerns that was brought to me during speaking with him about this last night is that over and over again, he was checking in with a random police officer on a day in or day out basis every week that he was supposed to. I think it's beneficial to a citizen who is on bail or parole and is required to check in to have the same person that they can go to time in and time out to build that rapport and build that relationship with them.
For sure. If I may, I didn't get a chance to add a little bit of information, but in regards to the community service, we've spoken to many people out there in the city that they want to have more things to do while in prison. Just fixing a light post is simply not enough. So I think implementing this will definitely benefit people being incarcerated.
Absolutely. We will now move into 2 minutes of direct questions. If anyone has any direct questions for the Johnson-Salison campaign before we move into debate round 3. All right, so moving along here, back to the forefront, we're going to be directing this third round of questioning at the Gordon Hall campaign to running mate Oliver Hall specifically. Mr. Hall, your campaign has stated that the appointment of Lieutenant Governor Mackenzie was unconstitutional. If you are aware of such topic, why was it only brought up at the government debate? And what makes the process used unconstitutional? Please elaborate.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for asking this question. I feel overall in the original debate, I really could have been more eloquent in effectively communicating how Ms. Mackenzie was unconstitutionally appointed. And of course, I do appreciate your question as to why it wasn't brought up previously. Now, overall, for those that do not know, after the resignation of former Lieutenant Governor Josh Ford, Governor Paxton nominated Ms. Mackenzie to fill his place. After that, the legislature conducted a vote, and she was confirmed shortly after that. After her appointment, a constitutional amendment was proposed and passed that would have actually given the governor authority to nominate and confirm lieutenant governors. Now, I want to sort of to sort of illustrate why Ms. McKenzie's appointment was illegal, I want you all to seriously consider why the Constitution would even have to be amended if Governor Paxton had the authority to appoint Ms. McKenzie. And the reason is he didn't have the authority. I mean, overall, we can see a similar situation in the federal system. Overall, previous to the 25th Amendment being ratified, vice presidents couldn't be appointed. That's why President Ford was the first vice president to actually be appointed. And other than the 25th Amendment, the reason that presidents couldn't appoint vice presidents when there was a vacancy, it was because it would be unconstitutional. And the same is true for the Constitution of San Andreas. Now, overall, if
all right,
asking,
Mr. Hall, I'm going to have to cut you off right there. All right. And we're now going to move into the group discussion on the matter if the other campaigns would like to weigh in.
I would personally like to weigh in. First and foremost, there was no mechanic in place to elect anyone into the lieutenant governor seat within this state. There was instead, from my understanding, from what I have been explained to Ms. McKenzie and a few other members of legislation, that there was a meeting between the governor's office and the legislature to discuss the next steps before nominating Ms. McKenzie. And having that discussion, they decided to have a vote that would basically, give me 1 second, let me just accurately remember what it was that was stated.
I see you having a bit of a shuffle over there, mate. I would like to remind you there are no electronics allowed at the podium. All right, Mr. Todd.
Me? No.
I just want to state that for all the representatives in attendance, right?
Yeah, no worries. So without that stipulation within the Constitution of San Andreas implemented, James Paxton took the initiative to nominate her, to which it was then discussed with the legislation and voted on. The fact of the matter is that it was then put after as an amendment to amend the Constitution to further process circumstances such as this, where a new lieutenant governor has to be appointed. Frankly, it's quite concerning that the acting member of the DOJ is choosing to double down and make baseless and factually incorrect statements about an individual just to make them out to be a criminal. Both speaking for Ms. McKenzie and Governor Paxton. Because if you are alleging that Governor Paxton illegally nominated Ms. McKenzie, then you are also alleging that Governor Paxton himself did something illegal, which he didn't. To go against the Constitution means that there had been something written there previously that went against everything that Mr. Paxton did, when in reality there wasn't anything written at the time. In all honesty, this was like just a stupid political tactic just to attack, because had this been a proper issue from the beginning, you would have brought this up 3 months ago.
That's actually incorrect. The only person on this stage that's wrong about this issue is you, Mr. Todd, and Ms. McKenzie. The fact is, Ms. McKenzie was illegally appointed. It's just as simple as that. This isn't a political gambit. This is the truth. Overall, the executive, Governor Paxton, exceeded his authority under the Constitution by appointing Ms. McKenzie. I understand.
With all due
you, Mr.
respect,
Todd,
Mr.
it may
Hall,
be a little bit
Please,
difficult
mind the interruptions. I'll give you guys the last
nuances
word. Absolutely.
of constitutional law, but Ms. McKenzie was illegally appointed. It's as simple as that, and that's why there needed to be a constitutional amendment. The constitutional amendment could have been passed first, and then Ms. McKenzie should have been appointed, but it wasn't, and I think that's really unfortunate.
All right, that is going to be time there. I will allow Lieutenant Governor McKenzie to have a final word on the matter.
Simply put, you're still acting DOJ. If there was, in fact, something done illegal, then arrest me.
I apologize. We have to end it there, but we are now going to move into any direct questions that we have for the Gordon Hall campaign in the last round of debate questioning here. If neither one of the two campaigns have any direct questions for the Gordon Hall campaign, we're going to be moving into round 3 of questioning for the Todd McKenzie campaign. And this question is going to be dedicated to Lieutenant Governor McKenzie. Ms. McKenzie, how would your administration address the lack of representation for Blaine County needs, from businesses to basic needs and services, such as a staffed hospital,
Getting the staff out there to begin with is going to be challenging. It is something they've been working on since the early months of last year. It is not something that is going to be an easy task to overcome. We can only continue to support the medical community as a whole, so that we don't feel as though everything has to be centered on Mount Zona. We can advocate for the improvement of the board of directors that was mentioned by Cole. I'm sure that was something that he has spoken to Maggie about. We can go ahead and do other things outside of just the medical facility to encourage businesses to move out there. In fact, DOCL's already doing this. The cost for premises in Blaine County and Grapeseed and Paleto is less than it is within the city. This is due to the congestion within the city for businesses. And it's an encouragement to have those businesses outside of the city. It would be a continuation of these programs that have already been founded and established by the current administration to continue to grow it, as that is essentially what the building blocks are already. We already have plans to help get boat docks out in Paleto, both to buy and rent. We already have plans in place to encourage more activity through tourism and Grapeseed to help generate activity out there that would inspire people to want to bring business into those areas. If it's a low income, low population community, it's hard to get people to want to be up there working a business. As somebody who has had a business in Grapeseed, it can be quite taxing to go up there and withstand the silence. So it's going to be a lot of challenge of talking to those communities, finding out what they need to prosper, talking to the community at large, the state, finding out what we're missing, what kind of businesses we still need.
Sure thing, Ms. McKenzie, Lieutenant Governor McKenzie, and we do appreciate your response here. We're now going to be moving into the 3 minutes of group discussion. If the other campaigns would like to weigh in on the topic.
Sure. I'd like to touch on the fact that I appreciate Ms. McKenzie for addressing the fact that our plan, if elected in office, is a good idea for the medical board of directors. And it is something that we have talked to Maggie about, and we've already started to navigate some of the challenges that she brought forward, if that is to come into place, and reworking how that would work effectively within the community. Overall, when it comes to staffing of the hospital and making sure that everyone is afforded the healthcare that they deserve, there's a couple issues that have been brought to heart so far. One, the staffing, which, as I've stated earlier, I would like to see more government fairs and job fairs to introduce to the public the jobs that are available, including healthcare. Maggie did a great thing a while ago in setting up a teaching hospital and a medical school where people can come and get their medical license and learn if they, haven't previously been a nurse or haven't previously been a doctor. That is something I would like to see, again, when we talk about transparency, better communicated to the public as an option. I feel there's been a lack of communication with the public, and that is something that, if elected into office, we plan on improving.
A sure thing. Would the Johnson-Salison campaign like to weigh in on the topic before we move on?
I do. I don't remember what I was fully going to say, but I was going to add on a part of having better communication, really transparency between DOCL and the people of the city, is that we really don't know what's going on when it comes to the property tax and stuff of that nature. There was more that I wanted to add on to it, but I don't quite remember. But that is what I wanted to say.
Unfortunate. We do appreciate your response here, Ms. Salison. Any other discussion on the group topic? If not, we can now move into 2 minutes of direct questions for the Todd McKenzie campaign into round 3 of the debate here. All right, and if there's no further questions, we will move right along to the 3rd round of questioning for the Johnson-Salison campaign, and this question will be dedicated to running mate Jennifer Salison. All right. Ms. Salison, 8 people have been pronounced legally dead since October 29th. What would your administration do to address the ongoing issues regarding death certificates and to ease the burden of loved ones who can't get closure after tragedy?
I believe that's a part of working with law enforcement and especially MCD. I do have good faith that our MCD is doing the best they can to knock down these numbers to make sure that further murders and stuff like that is not happening. Um, I do send my apologies for people that are experiencing that. Um, as far as our plan is to really converse with law enforcement to see what we can do better to help them, to see what resources they need to improve upon administering law in the city.
If I may, Miss Salison, back you up a bit. You had stated MCD on the matter, and I wanted to clarify a bit. If the issues are surrounding regarding death certificates and giving loved ones closure, they need to actually bury their loved ones, needing the death certificate for the mortuaries and things of that nature. Do you think this
Okay.
falls on the responsibility of MCD?
Oh, no, 100%. I'm not really. I don't know much information in regards to death certificates, but what I can say is that I know that there's been a slack of death certificates being signed, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And that is something that we would like to work with Mount Zona along with bettering that and improving upon it.
Absolutely, Ms. Salison. We appreciate your response and that clarification. All right. We will now move into 3 minutes of group discussion. If any other campaigns would like to weigh in on the topic,
Sure, I'll weigh in.
please.
With what's going on with the amount of death certificates and well, I should say the lack of death certificates being published
Absolutely.
to those families. First and foremost, this is going to take a collective effort from not only those who work for Mount Zona, but from the coroner's office. From my understanding, there are only 2 doctors that are qualified to perform autopsies on bodies to even fully grasp as to what the cause of death is. I believe personally, and I'm pretty sure Ms. McKenzie and the rest of my campaign as well would say the same, would be to have more doctors certified to perform autopsies, just so that we can get these death certificates out, just so that we can have these families get the closure that they so righteously and so graciously deserve. They shouldn't have to wait months on end for them to either say yes, they died due to a gunshot wound, or they died due to natural causes. And at the end of the day, it's all about working as a collective effort with the doctors at Mount Zona who are certified with performing autopsies, with getting more classes done, with having more doctors certified, just so that there's more of a push towards getting these death certificates on.
Absolutely. Thank you for that response, Ms. Gubernatorial Candidate Todd. Would the Gordon Hall campaign like to weigh in on the topic before we move on to direct questions?
Yes, we would love to touch on that, and I thank you for the question.
Please make it brief because we've ran a bit over. All right, but I will allow it. Thank you.
Sure. I fully agree with Vlad in this sense that we need to work with the hospital. But the difference is we have a plan on how to do that. As touched on earlier, one of the benefits of this hospital and one of the great things that Maggie Martindale has done for the state is establish the hospital as a teaching hospital. One of the things we need to do is make sure that there are more doctors available to receive that instruction, to get that certification to perform autopsies. Make sure that those doctors are available to release those bodies to the families so they can get that closure. Personally, while out on the campaign trail, I've spoken with 2 families that have yet to bury a loved one, and that is completely unfortunate. And I would say that is a lack with the current system and a failure there. One of the things we plan on doing, because we have that plan to action in place, is working with Maggie, working with the hospital, working with a potential medical board of directors to ensure that the teaching hospital is working to its full capacity to certify more doctors in order to perform those autopsies, to get the bodies processed quicker and released to the public within a reasonable amount of time so these families can have the closure that they deserve.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gordon. I appreciate your response. We'll now move into the last round of direct questions for the evening for the Johnson-Salison campaign. And if there are going to be no more direct questions for the evening, ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our 3 rounds of questioning here. And as we move forward before closing out tonight's debate, we'll be allowing each campaign a 2-minute closing statement, starting with the Golden Hole campaign first.
Thank you, Nigel. Overall, and I are running is because there are systemic issues in our current government. There are issues where the government has stagnated, where they have failed the citizens of San Andreas to resolve the issues that the everyday citizens of San Andreas are facing. Our Gordon Hall administration would work tirelessly to address the many issues that the state is facing, including in our criminal justice system, including in our healthcare, including in our employment law, and of course, including in the many topics that we've discussed today. Cole and I are confident that if we are elected, we have the plans and policies already in our minds that we can enact and ensure that the government actually addresses these issues. And if we are elected, we will make sure to work with all agencies of government, now the previous administration as well, to ensure that the government is functioning as best as it can be. I think Cole may have something to add.
You know, I couldn't have agreed with my lieutenant governor candidate more than anyone. At the end of the day, we've talked about it. It's results through reform. And how do you get results? You get results through action. We have plans in place, and we plan to take action through our plans to make sure that every citizen at the end of the day receives the fair treatment by the government, and that the government is working for the people of the state as it should have done so long ago.
Absolutely, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Hall, we appreciate your closing statements this evening, all right, and we wish you the best on your campaign. Moving on to the closing statements of gubernatorial candidate Vlad Todd, mate Lieutenant Governor McKenzie. Your closing statement, please.
Carmen and I stand before you today because we see the societal issues and injustices that happen on a day-to-day basis. Myself, personally, I grew up Fudge as a member of the Aztecas. And having that firsthand experience, not just as a member of society, but also as a businessman and those who have defended criminals legally. The only reason I know what needs to be done is because I've seen it firsthand. I've witnessed it firsthand. I haven't been sitting in an office prosecuting people. I have bled, I have cried with every single member in this state, and I will continue to do so through our campaign. The limits of the possible can only be defined by going beyond them into the impossible. We can only do and act based off of what we see and experience. We don't wait till campaign season. We don't drive around a fancy bus to say, hey, we care. Because at the end of the day, I have always cared. I have always heard and listened to the people, and I will always continue to do so. Ms. McKenzie, if you have anything else to add?
About 45 seconds, Miss McKenzie.
No, I'm okay.
Sure thing. Well, we thank you for your closing statement there, and we do wish you the best on the rest of your campaign. All right? So moving on now, we're going to be having the closing statement for the Johnson-Salison campaign. We will take your closing statement now. 2 minutes, please.
All right, sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as everybody else here, we all want to see an increase, and we want to see the ability for our citizens to do better for themselves. One of the biggest things, you know, is that we were law enforcement, and we understand what it's like to take a break and actually see the issues of the state firsthand. While, yes, we understand that other individuals have experience with DOJ prosecution, whether it be defense, whether it be private organization, there's a difference working with someone in the courthouse or in the jail cells versus being out there on the street and seeing what's actually bothering the individuals and the people that live in the areas that need some help. With that said, we do have a way forward. We have plans, we have actions, and should we be elected, we'll make sure to implement those plans, and they won't just be written down on a paper for us to take notes of, regardless of who is elected up here today. To be honest, it won't matter, and we'll still be in their ear, and I'm sure that they would be in ours if elected. Thank you, Nigel, for your time.
Right, we appreciate that closing statement. You've still got about 45 seconds if you'd like to weigh in, Ms. Salison.
No, I think he's good here.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do appreciate your closing statement, and we wish you the best on the future of your campaign. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude the CNT gubernatorial debates for the evening. The full video and highlights will be available on our website, www.cnt-sa.com. You can also view a full platform agenda by all the candidates on the CNT website. Once again, we wanted to thank the Little Teapot and Merryweather Security for their assistance this evening with the event. And we would like to remind you, our final representative debate will be this Wednesday, January 12th, 2022 at 9:30 p.m. Eastern here on the rooftop of the Diamond Resort and Casino. As a reminder, a government-issued badge for CNT or a ticket will be required for entry. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the second round of the CNT Politipoll is opening tonight at midnight Eastern. Be sure to voice your opinion online before official voting begins this Thursday. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this evening. Candidates, I thank you all very much for your cooperation and your politeness. All right, absolutely. I wish you all the best on your campaigns.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.